Hi everyone, welcome to my review of the Dita Navigator, which is an excellent dongle that I'm certain is flying under the radar. Guys, dongles are obviously very interesting, and a lot of you like dongles, and they've become quite popular lately. But the Navigator, I think, is so. First of all, I hope a lot of you guys have heard about Dita. Dita Audio is just this phenomenal brand, and I have sort of hyped up their the Dita Perpetua because it wasn't really well known in the Western markets. But now they are, and a lot of people who have picked up the Perpetua have, later on thanked me and talked about how amazing it is. So I'm very happy the Perpetua worked out for some of you. And now it's all the rage on sort of summit fight threads like water cooler on headfi. So the Navigator is their first foray into dongles. So dongles, like I was saying, have become very, very popular lately. And I would even venture out to say that the market has become oversaturated with dongles. Every single week, there is a new dongle from yet another brand. However, I've noticed three different classes of dongles, right? The first one is the hyper budget, which is the sub $100 class. The second one is the sub $200 class, and that I think is the most sort of like the space where most dongles hang out. And lastly, you have dongles that are priced above $200, which can be classified as high-end dongles. And then you have dongles like the Luxury and Precision W4, and then Ibasso DC Elite, and these dongles go for close to $500, so those are pretty expensive, I think, for dongles. Okay, so ironically, the best among the dongles is not extremely well known, and I think that is the Navigator. So I haven't yet tried the Ibasso Elite, so I'm looking forward to trying that. And Q-Style M18, they have come out with the CMA 18, which I'm yet to try, which is about to reach me soon. So not having tried those, I do think the Navigator is the best in class dongle. So initially when this was released, I thought it would be priced around $600, but surprisingly, Dita has priced it at only $300. So it's not only in, because it's, a lot of people would say, why are you calling it, or why are you saying it's only $300? Because it is still a dongle, and dongles aren't meant to be that expensive. But if you stay tuned for the rest of this video and allow me to talk you through the sound notes that I have, notes on his sonic profile, and I'll also do comparisons in terms of, how this sort of stacks up to rivals such as the Kain RU7, such as the Q-Style M15 and the Shanling H5, and even the almighty IFI Griffon, which I love. You will understand why I think that this deserves a lot of hype. Okay, so specs-wise, this has a dual ES9219 DAC. Connectivity-wise, it's Type-C input, 3.5 single-ended and 4.4 balanced, as is pretty standard. The output power is 340 milliwatts at 32 ohms, 4.4, and 110 milliwatts at 32 ohms from the 3.5 output. It supports MQA16X native, PCM 768 kHz, 32-bit, and DSD256 native. This has dual FPGA independent crystal oscillator clocks. Now, as might be evident that this is overbuilt. This is built like a tank, and I'm yet to find a dongle that is so well built and overbuilt like this. It looks extremely premium. They didn't have to go so hard, but they did anyway. It looks rugged, industrial, and feels that way too. It is, because of those reasons, slightly on the heavier side, but I had no trouble managing it thanks to the incredibly well thought out Type-C cable that comes with it. And you do get two types of Type-C, one for iPhones and the other for Android phones. And the Type-C cable is superbly ergonomic, and it also looks premium, and it's just stunning. Everything Dita touches looks and feels good and premium. So kudos to Dita for that. Okay. The Navigator does not have any LED indicator or a fancy OLED display, which is a smart design choice in my opinion. Displays and bright LEDs are cool for a little while, but ultimately I think they can look a bit cheap and distracting in such a small form factor, right? It looks like you're trying to oversell, to me at least. Now, to talk about sound, guys, and eventually I'll talk about how it drives IMs like the Aroma Audio Dual and the superlative HiFiMan Aria Organic, because some dongles struggle to drive headphones. But in terms of sound, and sonic impressions, the Navigator has a noticeable sub-bass boost that adds a little oomph to IMs and headphones that are paired with it. The bass response is overall clear and snappy. It's textured, and it's by far the best textured bass that I've come across in any dongle. And Dita does understand bass really well, because even in the IM like the Perpetua or the very humbly priced Project M, which also will get a review, you'll see that, I mean, that review might have dropped already. You'll see that Dita does bass texture in a very interesting way. The bass notes sound very lifelike, and that's not because of impact or slam or anything, just simply because of how they understand bass decay and texture. So this is no different. It does reproduce bass really well. The mid-range is uncolored, linear. It's not as lush as an i5 Griffon or a Shanling H5, but it's not as dry as a Q-Style M15 either. It is almost identical to my favorite Aroma Audio Air, which is of course a portable Bluetooth DAC cam, and I've reviewed the Aroma Audio Air on this channel, so do check that out. The Aroma Audio Air is another underrated device. Now, this has the most masterfully executed treble among dongles. It's very airy and spacious, yet it has a bit of a roundedness in the edges, so it doesn't sound bright. Now, I've come across some people saying that this is warm, which is not the case, because smooth treble does not equate to warmth. It can be perceived as warmth, but I don't think it's a warm sounding dongle. The soundstage width and depth is above average, I think. It's not extraordinary, but it's not bad by any means. The imaging, however, is really good for a dongle. It's the layering and separation has been a Dita staple for me, and the Navigator is no exception. The things, because of layering much more so than soundstage, tends to sound very grandiose because of the depth. And resolution is decent and is as good as any other flagship dongles. So the ES9219 is not the most high-spec Sabre chip, but even basic chips nowadays are resolving, so there isn't a whole lot to choose between dongles when it comes to resolution. But it is the sort of composite sound profile which makes this a goddamn winner, in my opinion. Now, the Navigator is the first dongle that I've come across that can properly drive headphones. I mean, sure, other dongles can play headphones loud, but the bass quality and dynamics take a noticeable hit with other dongles. Not so much with the Dita Navigator. So I think what happens with other dongles is that the headphones start sounding a bit cheap, but the Navigator does play even planars like the Aria Organic with absolute finesse. I get proper bass texture and speed, and there's nothing lacking with the Organic. I do feel that our Organic gets a bit of a bass lift even with the Navigator. A bit of a bass lift. The sound stage still sounds its usual cavernous self. It doesn't sound extra wide, which it can on certain sources. It sounds decently wide, and the depth does not get compromised. The resolution is very impressive, and overall the Aria sounds airy and just absolutely stunning. So huge kudos to the Navigator for driving the Aria so well. And I've talked about how it drives IMs, or maybe I've not talked about. No, I've not talked about how it drives IMs. So IMs are driven without it breaking a sweat. So this is, of course, not the Aroma Audio Jewels, which I keep talking about in most of my reviews, but this is the Campfire Trifecta, which is perhaps my second favorite IM. And if you want to know my rankings, I have done rankings towards the end of last year, 2023. So do check out my IM rankings if you want to understand what my favorite IMs are. So this is currently my second favorite. So these IMs are fabulous, and they sound punchy, and their soundstage is cavernous and cathedral-like, and the timbre is very sweet and woody. I even like mid-range with certain tips, like these ones, these wider bore ones. I think, allow the treble to be slightly smoothened. The Navigator sounds perfect with this. I mean, it doesn't sound bright, it doesn't sound peaky, it doesn't sound sharp in the treble. It still sounds very punchy and impactful, and the mid-range sounds very natural, and the timbre is just very well retained. And I've even tried the Aroma Audio Jewel with this, which is a $5,200 IM, and this does deliver. In fact, the Jewel sounds really nice on this, because the Jewel can be somewhat polite, and on the Navigator, the Jewel sounds a little more dynamic and punchy because of its inherent sort of sub-bass oriented bass replay. So I would recommend this with any IM that you're trying to wake up in terms of its bass response. Now, of course, this is a very interesting thing going on. They have these independent volume controls. So these are very interestingly designed volume controls. I really like their look. So the way this works is it is recommended that you max out the volume from your source, whether it is your iPhone or your a laptop or your tablet PC. And once you max out the volume on the source, then you adjust it using these rockers. These rockers are big and accessible, and they look very industrial, which is in keeping with the overall aesthetics of this really cool design. Adjusting on the fly, adjusting the volume on the fly is not bothersome. I'll just, drop a few comparisons. So firstly, the Q-Style M15, which has become quite popular. I do feel the Q-Style M15 has a noticeably smaller soundstage, and the M15 does not have the natural treble that this does. The M15 sounds a bit artificial in treble, I think. The Navigator is also more dynamic, more natural, and does have, like I said, superior layering. The Kind RU7 is another solid device. Solid device. So the RU7 is often praised for a soundstage, right? But the Navigator, I think, does outclass it for a soundstage, especially soundstage depth, and is also more resolving, and certainly, again, has a superior treble, which is going to be a running theme because this does beat most dongles for treble. The RU7 has somewhat of a grainy treble, and I wasn't a fan of the RU7's bass either. It was a bit diffuse, where this is impactful and tight. Now, to talk about slightly bigger DAC products, slightly larger in form factor, like the Shanling H5. The H5 has that lush, organic AKM sound and is slightly more resolving, has a thicker mid-bass and lower mid-range than the Navigator. But the Navigator has, it's a bit of an all-rounder, right? Because it does play well with every kind of IM because it is not as warm as the Shanling H5. So I do prefer the Navigator even to the H5 because of its absence of warmth. It can be paired with anything. So you can pair it with the warm IM, whereas with the H5 from Shanling, a warm IM becomes overly warm, I think. And finally, the i5 Griffon, which I own, which I love, and I'm very, very happy with. The Griffon is ever so slightly more resolving, I think, and has more sharp transients than the Navigator. The Griffon is a slightly higher-end versatile device that does cost twice as much as the Navigator, so perhaps this is not a fair comparison. But the Navigator is not too far off from the Griffon, sound quality-wise. So that's it, guys. This is a very, very impressive product. And do check it out if you can. If you like this video, give this a like and follow my work if you have not already. And stay tuned for my next one. Bye-bye.